I came home from war to find my wife in a wedding dress. Not for me. She smiled at him. I smiled back, because she didn't know I brought hell with me. I stepped off the military bus into the crisp Virginia fall air, my uniform still carrying the dust of Afghanistan. 2 years in that hellhole, and all I had to show for it was a faded backpack clutched in my hand, containing what little remained of my life overseas. I was finally home. The entire ride back, my mind had been filled with images of Samantha and Noah, the few handwritten letters we'd exchanged, those brief, static-filled calls when the connection wasn't cutting out. Her whispered promise, "I'll wait for you to come home." After 2 years in the desert, those words had been my oasis. I walked the familiar streets toward our house, the one where I'd painted every wall, where I'd invested every hope for after the war. This was supposed to be the moment, the payoff for all the sacrifices, the hero's welcome. But when I turned the corner, there was only Noah sitting on our front steps, hunched over with a worn toy car in his hand. No Samantha, no welcome committee, just my 7-year-old son looking smaller than I remembered. When Noah looked up, something in his eyes made me freeze mid-step. There was sadness there, and something else, unfamiliarity, as if I were half stranger to him now. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. "Hey, buddy," I called, trying to keep my voice steady. "Where's your mom?" He stared at me, lips trembling before the words tumbled out. "Mom is marrying Uncle Ryan at Grace Hill Church, right now." The world stopped. I stood motionless, my brain refusing to process what I'd just heard. Ryan Fletcher, my childhood friend, my brother in arms, the guy who'd known about Samantha from the very first day I met her. Then instinct took over. I dropped my bag on the lawn. "Stay here, Noah," I ordered, already turning back toward the road. The church was 5 miles away. Taking the car would mean finding keys, starting it up. Too slow. I started running. With each pounding step, memories flashed through my mind. Ryan and me growing up in this small town, enlisting together, sharing everything. Him being the first person I told about meeting Samantha. The best man at our wedding. Noah's godfather. The hope I'd carried home morphed into confusion, then rage, then a sense of betrayal so profound it burned in my chest with each gasping breath. I reached Grace Hill Chapel just as the bells began to ring. Without hesitation, I shoved open the heavy wooden doors with both hands. The sound echoed through the hall like a thunderclap, and every head turned toward me. And there they were. Samantha in a pristine white wedding dress, standing beside Ryan in his tailored suit, clutching a bouquet of white roses. The sight punched the air from my lungs. What gutted me wasn't the scene itself, but Samantha's reaction. She didn't look afraid or guilty. She looked annoyed. Annoyed that I was interrupting her special day. "You betray me in front of God?" I shouted, my voice bouncing off the high ceiling. The church fell silent. Faces from both families stared in shock. Many couldn't meet my eyes. Ryan took a step forward, hand outstretched. "Brandon, calm down. Calm down." Those words lit the fuse. My fist connected with his jaw before I could think, sending him crashing into a flower arrangement. Glass shattered across the floor. Samantha lunged at me, shoving me back. "You're ruining everything!" she screamed. "I lost everything for you," I roared back. I caught a glimpse of my mother starting to rise from her seat, but my father held her back, his expression helpless. Samantha turned to the priest, her voice imperious. "Continue the ceremony!" Whispers erupted throughout the church. Someone pulled out a phone, starting to record. I looked around, searching for a single ally, a single face that might understand. Even my sister kept her head bowed. Then I saw Noah, standing terrified behind my aunt, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. I walked over and took his hand. Then I turned to Samantha one last time. "This isn't over." I led Noah out of the church, feeling the judgmental stares boring into my back from both sides of the aisle. Outside on the church steps, Noah's small hand trembled in mine. "Dad, what's going to happen now?" he asked, his voice small. I squeezed his hand reassuringly, though inside, a single thought crystallized with perfect clarity. I would show her what it truly meant to lose everything. Pulling out my phone to search for the nearest hotel, I discovered our joint bank account had been locked. A text message from an unknown number flashed on the screen. "Don't bother coming back. Everything belongs to me now." I found us a rundown motel on the edge of town, one of those places where industrial workers used to stay during factory shutdowns. The room smelled of cheap disinfectant and decades of cigarette smoke, but it was all I could afford with the emergency cash I kept in my wallet. Noah fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the emotional chaos. I sat motionless on the edge of the bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, my mind racing with one question. How long had she been planning this? At first light, I called Dylan Brooks. We'd served together. He was our unit's tech specialist before he left the service and became what he called a freelance information specialist, what everyone else would call a hacker. "Jesus Christ, Brandon," he said after I explained the situation. "That's some cold-blooded shit. But hey, you pulled me out of that collapsed building in Kandahar. Whatever you need, brother." Within 3 hours, my phone was bombarding with files and messages from Dylan. What I saw made my stomach turn. Photos of Samantha and Ryan at luxury hotels and resorts, including one dated on our wedding anniversary. Text messages discussing moving my things out of our bedroom over a year ago. A video clip of them with Noah at what looked like a family gathering I'd never even heard about. Then a message that sent ice down my spine. Samantha to Ryan. "He's just a relic of the past. You're the future for Noah and me." "There's more," Dylan texted. "She transferred all the money from your joint account to a personal one she opened 6 months ago." I scrolled through Dylan's findings, each revelation worse than the last. She'd hired a divorce lawyer, filing papers claiming I was missing and untraceable, while I was sending her messages from Afghanistan that she deliberately ignored. "She also bought a new car," Dylan wrote. "Loans in your name." My hands trembled as I put down the phone. This wasn't just emotional betrayal. This was calculated destruction, a systematic effort to erase me from my own life while I was fighting overseas. Noah stirred and sat up, rubbing his eyes. "Dad, does Mom still love you?" The question knocked the wind out of me. I could only pat his head gently, unable to find words that wouldn't scar him. My phone buzzed again. "Found a contract Samantha signed with a PR firm," Dylan wrote. "She's planning to smear you online if you fight back." I needed a countermove. I called Melissa Carter, the sharpest lawyer I knew from my pre-deployment days. "I'll be at your office tomorrow," I told her after explaining the basics. "We need to move fast." Just as I was about to put my phone away, Dylan sent one final file. Bank statements showing suspicious transactions, including what looked like money being wired offshore. I'd barely processed this when my phone rang. "Brandon," Dylan's voice was urgent. "I just hacked into Samantha's secondary email. She's planning to fabricate domestic abuse allegations to get full custody of Noah and the house. Want to hear the recording?" I clenched my fists so hard my knuckles turned white. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was a fight for survival, my survival, and my son's future. "Send it," I said through gritted teeth. "Send everything you've got." I didn't sleep that night. The recording Dylan sent was Samantha's voice, clear as day, plotting to destroy me with false accusations. "He's unstable from the war," she told someone. "All I need is for a judge to believe he might be dangerous. No one will question it. Soldiers come back broken all the time." By morning, I'd made a decision. Ryan Fletcher needed to understand the price of betrayal. Dylan texted me Ryan's detailed schedule. Every Monday morning, he leaves Summit Ridge Capital at 8:30 and walks to that bougie coffee place on Jefferson, like clockwork. I didn't want to confront him in some dark alley. I wanted witnesses. I wanted him to feel exposed and helpless in broad daylight, just like I'd felt standing in that church. Monday morning came. I parked across from the coffee shop and waited. At 8:35, Ryan appeared, strutting down the sidewalk with an overpriced coffee in hand. His blue suit was perfectly pressed, his posture relaxed. The posture of a man who hadn't destroyed someone's life. I stepped out of my car and approached, deliberately making my footsteps loud enough for him to turn around. The color drained from his face when he saw me. Pure instinct made him back up. "Brandon," he started. I grabbed his collar and slammed him against the coffee shop's glass window. People around us gasped. A few pulled out phones and started recording. "Brandon, listen, man. Let me explain." His voice was shaking. I leaned in close, my voice low but menacing. "I don't need explanations from a backstabbing piece of shit like you." I held him there, pinned like an insect, making sure he felt the same fear and helplessness I'd felt, making sure everyone watching knew he was the villain in this story. "You slept with my wife," I snarled, emphasizing each word. "You pretended to be a father to my son, and you had the balls to stand at the altar like you were innocent?" His eyes darted around, looking for help that wasn't coming. "It was her idea," he blurted out. "All of it. She said you were never coming back, that she needed a real man, someone who wouldn't leave." I released his collar only to throw him down onto the sidewalk. His coffee cup hit the concrete, splashing across his expensive suit. Before walking away, I tossed a USB drive onto his chest. "Everything I know is on there. If you ever go near Noah or have anything to do with Samantha again, I won't just let the police handle you." Ryan sat there on the ground, breathing hard, fear etched across his face. I walked away through the crowd of curious onlookers, unhurried, like I'd just finished a casual business meeting. When I got back to the motel, I found an anonymous email waiting. "Don't think you've won just because you scared Ryan. I'm not so easily intimidated." I forwarded it to Dylan, who confirmed it came through a VPN. "But it's definitely Samantha," he added. "The linguistics match her other messages." Noah was sitting on the bed watching cartoons when I walked in. He looked up at me with those innocent eyes I'd missed so much while deployed. "Dad, is Uncle Ryan your friend?" he asked. I froze. How do you explain betrayal to a 7-year-old? How do you tell your son that your best friend stole your life while you were fighting a war? "He used to be," I finally managed, sitting next to him. "Sometimes people change, buddy." Noah nodded like he understood, though I knew he couldn't possibly grasp the depth of what was happening. I put my arm around his small shoulders, promising myself that whatever happened, I would protect him from the worst of this. My phone rang. It was Melissa, my lawyer. "Brandon," her voice was tense. "Samantha just filed an emergency petition with the court. She's accusing you of threatening behavior and emotional abuse toward both her and Ryan. We need to act immediately before this spirals out of control." I gripped the phone tighter. "What's our next move?" "Meet me at my office in an hour. Bring everything Dylan sent you. And Brandon, don't go anywhere near Samantha or Ryan. That's exactly what she wants." I hung up and looked at Noah, who had gone back to watching his cartoon, blissfully unaware that his mother had just launched her first legal attack. This wasn't just about my broken heart anymore. This was war, and Samantha had just fired her first official shot. But I'd spent 2 years in a real war zone. I knew how to fight back when everything was on the line. I gathered my evidence and kissed Noah's forehead. "We're going to see a friend of mine," I told him. "She's going to help us fix things." Noah looked up at me with complete trust in his eyes. "Are we going home soon?" "Not yet, buddy," I said, my resolve hardening. "But we will. I promise." Melissa Carter's law office occupied the top floor of a downtown building with floor-to-ceiling windows that gave a commanding view of the city. The walls were lined with framed court victories and law degrees. Noah sat in the reception area with a coloring book while Melissa led me into her office. "Samantha's been methodical," Melissa said, spreading folders across her desk. "These divorce papers were prepared months ago. She's claiming abandonment, citing your deployment as voluntary desertion of family responsibilities." My blood boiled. I was serving my country. "I know." Melissa's eyes softened momentarily before returning to their professional sharpness. "She's also filed for emergency full custody, painting you as unstable and potentially violent. The confrontation with Ryan plays right into her narrative." I pulled out my phone and downloaded everything Dylan had sent. "I've got evidence." Melissa scrolled through the photos of Samantha and Ryan at luxury resorts, text messages discussing their affair, bank statements showing how she'd drained our accounts, and finally, the damning audio recording. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair with a cold smile. She thinks her weapon is deception. Ours is the truth. My phone buzzed with a text from Dylan. Found something new. She hired a PR firm specializing in reputation management. They're prepping to paint you as an abusive husband and deadbeat dad on social media, already creating fake accounts to spread the story. I showed Melissa the message. This is actually good for us, she said. Proves premeditation. But Brandon, I need you to be ice cold from now on. No more confrontations like the one with Ryan. That's exactly what she wants. Evidence of your volatility. I nodded. What's our next move? I'm filing counter motions today, but we need more. Is there anything at the house that might help? Financial documents? Correspondence? I can check, I said. Dylan can tell me when they're both out. 2 days later, Dylan confirmed Samantha and Ryan were at a lawyer's meeting. I used my key to enter what used to be my home. The place felt foreign now, like a museum of my former life. I went straight to Samantha's office and started searching. The receipts I found told their own story. Spa treatments, luxury vacations, designer clothes, all charged to our joint account while I was dodging bullets in Afghanistan. Then I found a folder labeled Future Plans. Inside was a detailed roadmap for erasing me from their lives, steps to isolate my assets, a timeline for the divorce, and talking points about my mental instability. In the back of her filing cabinet, I discovered transfer agreements putting several assets in Ryan's name, a textbook move to hide joint property before a divorce. I photographed everything and slipped out, the weight of her calculated betrayal sitting like lead in my stomach. Back at the motel, a new email from Samantha waited. If you don't want to be smeared everywhere and lose custody, you should sign over everything now. I forwarded it to Melissa, who replied almost immediately, "Perfect, more evidence of coercion." The next day, Melissa filed our countersuit, alleging adultery, financial fraud, defamation, and conspiracy. The court responded by freezing all joint assets pending resolution, our first real victory. "We've got her on the defensive now," Melissa told me over the phone. "But don't celebrate yet. She's cornered, which makes her more dangerous." Dylan's next update confirmed this. "Brandon, she just wired $20,000 to an offshore account in the Bahamas. She's preparing an escape route." I spent that evening with Noah at a local diner, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. He seemed to be adapting to our motel life with the resilience only children possess, but I could see the questions in his eyes. When we returned to the motel, an envelope had been slid under our door. Inside were photos of me grabbing Ryan by his collar, along with a handwritten note. "You think you're the hunter? Be careful. You're becoming the prey." I crumpled the paper in my fist, my knuckles white with tension. Samantha was playing dirty, but she'd forgotten one critical detail about me. I'd spent 2 years in a war zone. I knew how to fight enemies I couldn't see, and I knew how to win when everything was at stake. Noah looked up from his comic book, his innocent eyes meeting mine. "Is everything okay, Dad?" I forced a smile. "Everything's fine, buddy. Just grown-up stuff." But as I tucked him in that night, watching his peaceful face as he drifted off to sleep, I renewed my silent promise. I would not let Samantha take him from me, no matter what it took. The threatening envelope was the last straw. I called an emergency meeting with Melissa and Dylan at her office the next morning. Noah was spending the day with a sitter Melissa had vetted, a retired teacher who understood the need for discretion. "We need to stop playing defense," I said, tossing the photos and note onto Melissa's desk. Dylan, who I was finally meeting in person after years of digital communication, nodded in agreement. He looked exactly as I remembered, wiry, intense, with fingers that never stopped moving across his laptop keyboard. "To beat Samantha Whitmore," Melissa said, tapping a manicured nail on her desk, "we need her to confess everything, not in writing, not in emails she can deny, but with her own voice." "A trap," I said. "Exactly," Dylan grinned. "And she thinks you're too straightforward to set one." The plan was simple. I would play the desperate ex, reaching out to Samantha for a face-to-face negotiation. We'd make her believe I was cracking under pressure. Dylan produced a small box from his backpack. Recording equipment. This watch has a high-definition camera and microphone. This tie clip is a backup audio recorder. Military grade, completely undetectable. Melissa chose the location, a quiet coffee shop downtown with security cameras covering every angle. We need this to be bulletproof legally, she emphasized. I texted Samantha. We need to talk. Just us, about Noah. Her reply came almost immediately. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Riverfront Cafe. The next day, I arrived early and chose a corner table with good visibility. At exactly 2 o'clock, Samantha walked in. Designer sunglasses, expensive clothes, radiating confidence like she was already celebrating her victory. "Brandon," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "How's Noah?" "He misses home," I said, playing my part. "That's why I wanted to talk, for his sake." "I've always put Noah first," she replied, her voice dripping with false concern. "This fighting isn't good for him." I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "The court froze our assets. They're looking into the financial transfers." A flash of irritation crossed her face before she controlled it. "You think I didn't anticipate that? I have more than enough ways to convince a judge you're a dangerous man, Brandon." "What are you planning?" I asked, injecting fear into my voice. She smiled coldly. "All it takes is for me to cry in front of the judge, tell them you used to hit me, that Noah saw it happen. You'll lose everything." My stomach clenched, but I maintained my facade. They'd need evidence. "I have witnesses ready to back me up. Text messages, even photos." She studied my reaction. "Amazing what you can do with the right connections." "And the money you transferred offshore?" I ventured. She didn't even bother to deny it. "Even if I lose, I have somewhere to disappear to. But I won't lose." For 20 more minutes, she detailed her plans, reveling in her perceived superiority. When she finally got up to leave, she patronizingly patted my shoulder. "You're not ruthless enough to beat me, Brandon. You never were." I sat there long after she left, my hands shaking with controlled rage. Then I gathered myself and headed back to Melissa's office, where Dylan was waiting with the recordings. We watched the video together on Dylan's laptop. Every damning confession, every threat, captured in perfect clarity. Melissa's cold smile returned. She just buried herself. Over the next 3 days, we assembled our final case. Dylan traced the offshore account to a second hidden account under a false name. He also uncovered evidence linking Ryan directly to asset transfers and falsified documents. "We need to lock him down too," I said. "Cut off all her escape routes." Our complete case file for the court was devastating. Proof of adultery with timestamps and locations, financial fraud documentation, the recorded confession of her plan to falsely accuse me, evidence of her escape preparations, and Ryan's complicity as a co-conspirator. Melissa sent a formal notice to Samantha's lawyer. "Prepare for a hearing your client cannot win." The night before the court date, Samantha called me. "I hope you're prepared to lose your son tomorrow," she said, her voice still confident. "You should worry about yourself," I replied, before hanging up. Later that night, Dylan called in a panic. "Brandon, she's wiped her phone and computer clean, and she's booked a one-way ticket to Mexico under an alias for tomorrow evening." I sank into the motel room's chair, watching Noah sleep peacefully in the bed. "She's planning to run if things go south," I said. "Should we alert the authorities?" Dylan asked. "No," I replied, a cold certainty settling in my chest. "Let her think she has an escape route. It'll make tomorrow's trap even more effective when it snaps shut." I hung up and walked to the window, staring out at the night sky. After months of being hunted, tomorrow I would become the hunter. And Samantha had no idea what was coming for her. The morning of the hearing, I walked into the courthouse with Melissa by my side. I'd borrowed a suit from Dylan, crisp, professional, and leagues different from my usual attire. My face was a mask of cold determination. Samantha sat on the opposite side, trying to maintain her composure, but I could see the exhaustion and stress in her eyes. Her lawyer kept leaning over, whispering urgently after receiving our evidence package the previous evening. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, called the court to order. The hearing began with Samantha's testimony, a performance worthy of an Oscar. "Brandon came back from Afghanistan changed," she said, her voice breaking on cue. "He became threatening, aggressive. I feared for Noah's safety. That's why I had to leave." She described incidents that never happened, tears streaming down her face. She spoke of my violent outbursts and unstable behavior, painting a picture of a broken war veteran who couldn't be trusted with a child. When she finished her theatrical display, Melissa stood. "Your Honor, I'd like to present newly discovered evidence." The judge nodded, and Melissa pressed play on the recording from the coffee shop. Samantha's voice filled the courtroom. "All it takes is for me to cry in front of the judge, tell them you used to hit me, that Noah saw it happen. I have witnesses ready to back me up. Text messages, even photos. Amazing what you can do with the right connections." The courtroom fell silent. The judge's expression hardened. Samantha's lawyer seemed to physically shrink in his seat. "This recording was obtained legally in a public place," Melissa continued. "And there's more." She methodically presented our evidence. Financial records showing Samantha's theft, forged documents, her plans to frame me, and the offshore accounts she'd established to hide assets. "And finally, Your Honor, we have evidence of conspiracy between Mrs. Cole and Ryan Fletcher to defraud not only Mr. Cole, but also this court." On cue, 2 police officers entered the courtroom just as Ryan arrived to testify. They handcuffed him as Melissa explained the charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, perjury, and falsification of legal documents. Samantha began to unravel. "This is a setup," she screamed, rising from her seat. "He's manipulating everything." The judge banged her gavel. "Mrs. Cole, control yourself or I'll have you removed." After reviewing all evidence, the judge delivered her ruling without hesitation. This court grants full custody of Noah Cole to Brandon Cole, with Samantha Cole's visitation rights suspended until completion of her 18-month probation, after which only supervised visitation will be permitted. The judge continued. "All joint assets, including the family home, vehicles, and bank accounts, are awarded to Mr. Cole. Mrs. Cole is ordered to repay all misappropriated funds and is prohibited from leaving the country pending further investigation into financial crimes." Samantha collapsed in her chair, the reality of her situation finally sinking in. As Noah and I walked out of the courthouse, Samantha came running after us, her mascara streaking down her face. "You can't do this to me," she sobbed, grabbing at my arm. "I have nothing left." I turned to face her one last time. "You created this yourself." She fell to her knees in the middle of the courthouse plaza, but I didn't look back. Noah was waiting by the car, and he was all that mattered now. Melissa caught up with me, handing me an envelope. "The Bahamas account has been frozen," she said with satisfaction. "She's truly got nothing left now." I nodded, feeling no joy, only the relief that comes with necessary closure. That evening, back at the motel where Noah had fallen asleep watching cartoons, my phone lit up with a final message from an unknown number. "You won. But don't forget, people like me never truly disappear." I stared at the screen, knowing the legal battle was over, but the scars Samantha Whitmore had left would remain with us. I deleted the message and looked at Noah's peaceful face. Tomorrow we'd go home, our home, and begin rebuilding what she had tried to destroy. After the court ruling, I officially became the legal owner of our house and all the assets Samantha had tried to steal. But instead of moving back in immediately, I decided to give Noah some time to adjust. The emotional whiplash he'd experienced needed to heal before we faced another big change. We left the motel but didn't go straight home. Instead, I rented a small apartment near Noah's new school to provide some stability while I got our real home ready. During that week, I dedicated my time to being the father I'd missed being for 2 years. We played catch in the park, went to movies, ate ice cream for dinner one night, little moments that seemed to slowly bring the light back into Noah's eyes. Melissa called with updates on the final legal proceedings. "Samantha's finances are completely restricted," she explained. She'll be paying restitution monthly for years and can't leave the country for at least 5 years. Dylan's update was equally satisfying. The Bahamas account is permanently frozen. She has nothing hidden away anymore. No nest egg to rebuild her life with. As for Ryan, he'd been sentenced to 2 years for fraud and conspiracy. The court mandated no contact with Noah or me after his release. Not that I was worried about him trying. A week later, Noah and I stood in front of our house. The place that had once symbolized happiness, then betrayal, now represented something new. Justice reclaimed. When I unlocked the door, I was shocked by the emptiness. Samantha had taken almost everything, leaving only what she couldn't sell. The space echoed with our footsteps. "It's so empty," Noah whispered. "That means we get to make it ours again," I said, squeezing his shoulder. From scratch. We spent the weekend remaking our home, not with expensive furniture or fancy decorations, but with the basics that make a house feel lived in. We hung Noah's art on the fridge. We set up a makeshift dining table using crates and a plywood board. We made it work. While cleaning out the attic, I found an old box Samantha had forgotten, filled with family photos from better days and unopened letters I'd sent from Afghanistan. Letters she'd never bothered to read. Noah found me sitting with them spread around me. "Are you sad looking at these, Dad?" I thought about it for a moment. "No," I finally answered. "They remind me how strong I had to be to get through all this. How strong we both were." Melissa invited me to her office to sign the final paperwork for the asset recovery. "By the way," she added, "Samantha just got fired from the diner where she was working. The scandal followed her there." I felt no satisfaction at this news. The woman who'd tried to destroy me had become irrelevant. One day a text came from an unknown number. "You won. I have nothing left. Hope you're happy with your victory." It was Samantha. I deleted it without responding. To me, she was nothing more than a ghost from the past now. Dylan sent a final email. "All digital traces of Samantha and Ryan have been cleaned from your records. Live in peace now, brother." I decided to take some time off from work, declining several security consulting offers to focus on rebuilding our life. Noah needed stability more than we needed extra money right now. We celebrated our new beginning with a small party in our still empty living room, pizza, soda, and Noah's favorite movie, Back to the Future. As the credits rolled, Noah looked up at me. "Are you going to leave again, Dad?" I put my hand on his shoulder, looking him in the eyes. Never again. A few weeks later, I started taking small security consulting jobs, using my military skills to stabilize our finances while still having plenty of time for Noah. I redrew the height chart on the wall where we'd always measured Noah, a fresh start, with no traces of the past. One morning, while walking Noah to school, I spotted Samantha lurking across the street. She looked haggard, her clothes worn and dirty. She watched us with the empty eyes of someone who had lost everything. I didn't stop, didn't even look at her twice. I just held Noah's hand tighter as we walked into the school, leaving her standing there like the stranger she had become. That afternoon, Melissa called. "Samantha filed for bankruptcy this morning. She'll be under financial monitoring for the next decade." I breathed a sigh of relief, knowing she no longer had the resources to disrupt our lives again. That evening, I stood on the porch, looking up at the stars, feeling truly at peace for the first time in years. I opened a new journal and wrote the first line. "This isn't an ending. This is where I begin again, with truth, with honor, and with my son." I closed the book and went inside where Noah was waiting for our nightly story. As I shut the door, I left behind every trace of Samantha Whitmore, the woman who tried to destroy my life, but ultimately only destroyed her own. The sweetest revenge wasn't taking her down in court. It was simply living well, better than ever, with the son she'd tried to steal from me.